And now, with nothing moving in my system, this is what it looks like. You guys, okay, so I'm gonna be talking about, in a minute, I'm gonna talk about the differences between GJs and Js and the information that I got and why I made the decision to get a GJ in 2 days instead of a J. And obviously the reason that I'm getting a feeding tube is I can't eat enough, I can't keep enough food down, I can't process food normally anymore. So I need some assistance. I've had a super rough couple days. Like my body's just not processing food right, like at all. And I mean, obviously, you can tell how thin I am. I got nothing. But something that happens when it's really, really bad is my abdomen distends. Because like nothing like from the top to the bottom works right with food anymore. And so I've been cleared to get rid of everything in my system. And I always take meds. Like I can't go to the bathroom like normal anymore. Like I have to have medication help. And I normally take 4 meds a day. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes 5 meds a day to try to help. And then there's still enemas that I can do and blah, blah, blah. But like I have the big laxatives that I get to take. But like my abdomen is so bad right now. So I thought you guys, I would show you what happens. Okay, first I'm gonna show you what I normally look like. So here's this. And now, with nothing moving in my system, this is what it looks like. Oh my gosh. And I mean, you can see my ribs and the whole thing. And my hip bones. But my whole abdomen, it's horrible painful. Oh my gosh. It hasn't been this bad in a long time. I think it knows I'm going in for the feeding tube, so it just decided to be like a dick, just really bad one more time. So, no baby in there, just horribly upset insides. It's awful. It hurts. It's so funny that you can see my little hip bones and then the awfulness. So yeah, so anybody out there that is experiencing stomach and intestinal dysmotility, oh my gosh, I feel your pain. Oh my gosh, it is so horrible. So there you go. That's one of the problems that we all have to deal with. Okay, I'll be back in just a minute and I'll tell you about the different tubes and all that good stuff, but bleh. And total change of plans. I felt so horrible last night. I didn't want to talk anymore. I couldn't imagine holding the camera. It was so bad. So I took all the meds that I could last night to try to help. Finally got some relief this morning at 4:30, I guess. I feel much better now, so I'll show you the difference. Okay, I'll show you the difference. Hold on. Yay! All back to normal now. Oh my gosh, it feels so much better. Yay. Oh my gosh. That's the last time it's gonna look like that. Well, I have one more day. Feeding tube tomorrow. So, I'll see if I can cut the rest of the video and kind of compare the GJ and the J for the information that I got, and yeah. One more day. Go team! Okay, one more thing to add on that last video. My stomach is still not back to normal. Close, but no cigar, so hopefully it'll get better throughout the day. So I'm in a new room today. I don't think I've ever been in this one for you guys. Here's my fish tank. My other cute seating area. An awesome quilt my mom made for me. It has plumeria, which is one of my tattoos. Oh, and an awesome wind chime. And some of my artwork. Okay, now I'm gonna get sit down, hold on. Oh my gosh, hold on, you have to see something else. Okay, I have the coolest leggings on today. Me, where is it? Empire State Building. Okay, I'm literally supposed to be in New York this weekend. And instead, I'm getting a feeding tube. That sucks. Okay, I think we're all set. So I asked tons of questions. I have tons of notes. I have to wrap my head around all of this stuff before I can like totally get on board. And so, super long story short is I was suggested by some people to get a surgical J tube. I was suggested by some people to get a surgical GJ tube. And I'm the one that has to live with it. And so I asked a bazillion questions of 3 different departments to figure out what was gonna work for my body. So, if you haven't watched the other video, I'll keep you in suspense until the end of this one. Okay, so I have my questions and answers from general surgery for the J tube. I have my questions and answers from interventional radiology, who does the GJ tubes at my health system. And then I have extra questions for interventional radiology for the GJ tube because they were really, really good at answering questions. So I'm gonna go down and kind of compare the 2 lists back and forth and go from there. So there are so many different kinds of feeding tubes. There are so many different reasons why you get feeding tubes. And so I have to have mine done because I have really bad GI dysmotility, literally from the top to the bottom. I have persistent thrush. I have throat infections that I get. I have esophageal dysmotility. I have gastroparesis. I have recurring SIBO infections in my small intestine, small intestinal dysmotility, severe large intestine dysmotility as well. So I literally, food is horrible. There's nothing more stressful in my day than food. So months and months and months of trying all of my other options, nothing has worked, so we're going the feeding tube route. Tomorrow, actually. So I'm half happy about it, half completely terrified. Very much hoping that everything goes well, but obviously complications and whatnot crop up in any, kind of procedure like this. Okay, so let's get to the meat of this. I don't know what that phrase means. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So types of feeding tubes, J tube. So a J tube goes through your abdomen. A new stoma is created between your small intestine and your abdominal wall. And then a short feeding tube is inserted into the stoma, and so you can feed directly into your small intestine. So it bypasses your stomach completely. There's lots of different kinds of formulas and stuff out there. I actually haven't been able to get nitpicky on that stuff because I don't even know what to ask on that stuff yet. So I know what to ask on it, but I haven't had the right department yet because I don't talk to them until after the surgery. So you have powdered, and you have that you mix up, and you have liquid that's already pre-mixed. And So you can't put food directly into any of those feeding tubes. So the powder, the liquid form or whatnot, it's kind of like pre-digested, like it's already been through your stomach per se. So it's already broken down and a heck of a lot easier for your body to process, which is what I need. Okay, how the J is actually, no, yes. So the J is fixed in place. Like it's actually like a little pouch is created in your small intestine, and it's actually surgically attached to the stoma that's created in your abdomen. A GJ tube goes through your abdomen and directly into your stomach, and, excuse me, it goes, so it's a longer tube, and it has kind of like two pieces on the inside of the outer tube, and one piece kind of stops in your stomach, and there are holes in that one that give you the ability to drain the contents of your stomach and vent your stomach if gas is trapped, whatnot. The other portion of the tube is extended past your stomach into your small intestine, and you have the ability to feed directly through that. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1. Your abdomen is, no, your stomach is fixed to your abdomen with a GJ tube. And there's like metal clips that hold it into place, and then sutures that will come out, 3 different sutures that come out kind of in a triangle shape around the tube through your abdomen. And then slowly but surely everything will kind of heal together, which is awesome. Makes the tubing easier and changes easier in theory. I'm having issues with foreign bodies lately, sutures being one of them. And so that's definitely a concern with either procedure. There's not a huge amount that I can do to prevent my body from trying to get rid of it. So we are going to cross our fingers that I don't have problems with these. They're gonna try to use the most hypoallergenic sutures as they possibly can, and then we'll do the best we can and go from there. With a J tube, okay, so I'm still able to eat regular food even with a feeding tube. I don't have any blockages. My gastroparesis is not as severe as some, which is fantastic. So I will still, once everything heals and settles and whatnot, we'll figure out what I can eat, what I can't eat. Not that there's a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it, like what I could eat yesterday I can't eat today, or something I eat today I can't eat tomorrow, or something I can't eat today will be totally fine tomorrow. So the stomach is a muscle, and if you don't use it, you lose it. And so we're still gonna try for oral intake. With a J tube, that would not be impacted. Your stomach isn't affected at all. It's not changed, it's not altered, not anything. With a GJ tube, with the tube going into my stomach first, my stomach is going to be attached to my abdominal wall, so that is going to affect how I eat. I will have a tube in my stomach, so that's already going to make the area inside my stomach smaller, so that's going to affect it. I will be having a tube, you know, go from my stomach down to my small intestine, so that would affect how food passes through. So those are all factors that may make it harder for me to eat going with a GJ tube as opposed to a J tube. I know okay, so there are these things called Tubi pads, and they're apparently in my mailbox, but it was like a monsoon last night and I was not stopping last night to get it. And so you have, once everything heals, and assuming you don't have granulation tissue or anything to deal with, you've got just plain Tubi pads that actually you wrap around the tube, and it gives you just kind of a little bit of a barrier between the outside of the tube rubbing on your already irritated skin. You have the potential of stomach acid and bile leaking past the balloon and past the tube in the stoma, and it can come out, leak out, whatever. with the J tube, it's a surgical tube. Like there's not an opening per se, like into your abdomen. With a GJ tube, even though yes, they are affixing your stomach to your abdominal wall, it's a little bit different than a surgical J. And so the potential for having stomach acid actually dump into your abdomen is a real potential complication. I had asked interventional radiology about it, and I was like, I can't, you know, obviously I can't see into my abdomen, so how am I supposed to know if that happens? Like, cause that's dangerous, that's real scary, real fast. And he was like, you will have no question whatsoever. And he was like, it is called stomach acid for a reason. It is an acid. And he was like, if you have it leaking out the, like past the tube, he's like, you will absolutely know it. He said, if you have it leaking into your abdomen, you will absolutely know it. There's no question whatsoever. He's like, it is horrible, painful. Yes, it is an emergency. And so, no matter what happens, like we've got everything in place so that if I have issues, whatever, we know what to do. Okay, so advantages and disadvantages to the J tube. Advantages. It is surgically created, so there is less to go wrong with the actual stoma sort of portion. You can have infections with both. Obviously you can have healing issues with both, but you're only making changes to your abdomen and your small intestine with a J tube. With a GJ tube, you're obviously making changes to your abdomen, your stomach, and your small intestine. So more things affected, more things that can be negatively affected. You don't have the ability to do anything with your stomach with a J tube, which is a disadvantage for me. You can't vent your stomach, you can't drain your stomach. Right at the current moment, I don't have a huge need for that portion of it, but with EDS and all of my awesomeness going on, there is a great potential that all of this is just going to get worse in the future. And so going with a GJ tube, so I'll just tell you, I'm going with a GJ tube because it's almost like I'm trying to future-proof my problems, at least give me as most advantages as possible. I don't have to use the G right now, but I have it in place if I need it. And then for the future, it's already done, as opposed to having to have a whole nother surgery to have a G tube added, or that I would have to have the J tube surgically altered or put back to a normal configuration and then have a GJ tube put in. So I'm going with the GJ from the beginning. A lot of it is also a trust factor as to why I'm doing it. I did not click well with general surgery at all whatsoever. Highly opinionated, would not answer my questions well, had to fight for information. Very, very, very frustrating. Interventional radiology, on the other hand, was ridiculously awesome. Very, very forthcoming, spent time with me on the phone. Appointment was great, kept me very informed for everything. Super, super awesome. So trust is a huge part of all of this. I think I went through 23, 24 doctors before I actually found out what was wrong, most of it. Subspecialties were added after that so that I could have more help with everything once we determined what was going on. But it literally took 23, 24 doctors to figure out what was going on. And I figured out what was going on. I just had to get to the right people to actually confirm it all, which it has been. So GJ, I really think is gonna be the best decision for me and my body for now and in the future. Placement in the abdomen. A GJ tube is normally like midline or a little bit off to the left, like under my ribs. And then a J tube is more like totally on the side because it would go directly into your small intestine. So I'm very, very much hoping that when the GJ is placed that I can have it off center. As opposed to right in the middle. I have more pain right in the middle, and so having to deal with my normal internal pain plus the pain of a tube. I'm very, very much hoping for off center, but we won't know until I'm totally out and they blow my stomach up with air and then do all of their imaging and all that stuff to determine placement. Okay, healing between the two procedures, honestly about the same. Maybe a little bit more complicated with the GJ just because my stomach and small intestine are affected. But it's more of like a laparoscopic type procedure. For the GJ tube, it's a little bit less invasive. It's still laparoscopic for a J tube, but like with the J tube, my entire abdomen would be filled with air for the procedure. And I have a very hard time processing air out of my system after abdominal surgeries. So not having to deal with as much air in my abdomen totally makes me happy. Much, much easier, at least mentally, if nothing else. Surgery wise, it's general anesthesia for either because I have to be out for everything that they have to do. For tube changes, we may be able to change that in the future, but it just depends on how I tolerate everything. I deal with chronic pain every day, all day. Chronic migraines, joint problems, muscle problems. My joints subluxate all the time. Horrible, horrible GI pain and problems. I get infections easily. So I deal with pain all the time. People with chronic pain tend to deal with pain differently. I've had it for so long, it's just kind of second nature. It's always there, so I can block it out pretty well. Obviously not if things are really, really, really bad, but on a normal basis, I can normally block it out. With surgeries, so I'm put out with anesthesia. And when I wake up from anesthesia, it's like my normal coping mechanisms for pain are completely hijacked. I have had what were supposed to be outpatient procedures before that have turned into 3 or 4 day hospital stays because they could not get my pain under control. It's horrible. It is so horrible. I don't even know how to describe it. So thankfully going into this surgery, I have a heck of a lot more information, if nothing else, that I know what normally works for me. I know how I react, so I can give people kind of a heads up before things start. So my medical team knows what to look for at this point, which is super, super helpful. The surgeries are slightly different. So J-tube blows up abdomen, laparoscopic creates pouch in the small intestine, creates hole in the abdomen, attaches everything together, insert tube, good to go. On GJ, once I'm put out, hopefully once I'm put out, I'll have an NG tube put in through my nose, so nasal gastric tube. So through my nose, down my esophagus and then into my stomach, and they blow up your stomach with air, and then they do all sorts of fluoroscopy and sonograms and radiology and all sorts of stuff to see exactly how your anatomy is, like how it is in your body, and then they determine where they're going in through your abdomen, where they're going in through your stomach. And so poke a hole, and clip and stitch everything together. And then they insert the tube through that new stoma, and then they again use all of their imaging to figure out, you know, where your outlet is to get to your small intestine, and then they have to feed the tube through that hole and then into the right place in your jejunum. The GJ surgery, hopefully, is going to be one procedure that my G tube is placed and my J tube is placed. There's about a 50% chance right now that they will not be able to place my J during the first surgery, and I am hoping that number is wrong because I really want both things, because the G at this point isn't really gonna help me. I can't feed into my G, I have to feed into my J. And so if something goes wrong and things are super messed up, because I've had some really bad weeks lately, and so if it can't be totally completed, then I have to go back in a month, and then once it heals a little bit, and then they will go back in, I'll be put out again, and then they'll go back in and try to complete the J portion of it. So fingers and toes and legs and everything else crossed that they can get the J placed as well, so that I can actually start feeding off of it the next day. Complications. Hugest complication, infection from either of them. Biggest complication for J tubes is that your small intestine can actually like twist and wrap around the inside of the tube. Didn't know that one until I talked to general surgery. So they said that was the worst for that procedure. You have flipping complications, especially with EDS patients, that the J portion, like the distal portion or end portion of the tube, especially if you're sick all the time, which mine comes and goes, like for actual vomiting, the tube can flip from your jejunum back into your stomach, and so you're feeding into your stomach, which does you no good whatsoever. It can be bad enough that you can actually vomit up the entire tube and it's stuck in your esophagus or out your mouth. Nothing you can do about it. You have to go back into interventional radiology to have it fixed. So we're gonna cross our fingers that that doesn't happen, because I know it happens to a lot of EDS patients. So there's just one tube for a J surgery, because it's just going to your jejunum. There's like a dual tube that goes for a GJ, but it's like a single long piece. I'll insert a picture here so you can kind of see what it looks like. So there's like 2 tubes on the inside of the outer tube, and you have holes in the outer tube where the gastric portion terminates, and that's how you're able to get the contents of your stomach out. And then at the end portion of the tube, there's holes that you actually feed through once you push it through the tube. The surgeries would happen at the same main hospital for my health system, so that part was the same. How long was the surgery? J-tube surgeries could be 45 minutes, an hour, somewhere around there, just, you know, from start to finish. GJ tubes it really depends on your anatomy, since they're not totally opening you up, and they're not, they don't have huge, big, like laparoscopic cameras that J surgeries have. He said the first portion of it can be done in like 10-15 minutes. The second portion is the one that always takes longer. So it could be 45 minutes, it could be an hour and a half. It just depends on how much they have to struggle to try to get it into place. But really probably about the same amount of time for the actual surgeries. How many days in the hospital? We were hoping it was only going to be 2, but now it's up to 4 days. I'm having my surgery done on a Friday, so the GJ is being placed Friday morning, 10:30. And so with it being a Friday, the surgery will take place on Friday. 24 hours after that, I will go back under radiology, fluoroscopy, whatnot, to make sure that the placement of the tube is still in the correct spot and everything is kind of double and triple checked. And then that day, like 24 hours afterwards, assuming my pain is under control and blah, 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 I will meet with a dietitian and a nutritionist from the hospital, and we will talk about all the things and figure out what my goal weight is, so that we can equate it to which kind of formula I need and how much I need, like the actual rate that is put in through the tube, like per hour. And we will start feeds really slow, make sure that I can tolerate them, and then try to titrate up and see kind of how things go. A lot of moving pieces into this. The thing that's complicating factors, obviously more time in the hospital is probably good for me, even though I don't particularly like it. I don't know anybody that does. It's so dark out this morning. It's already, I've been up since like 4:15, so it's already like 7:30, but it's so dark. It's been raining, and oh my gosh, it was crazy last night. Anyways, squirrel. so interventional radiology, there'll be kind of like 2 things in the hospital. Then I have to meet with, like, and I'll be on the GI floor. And so my head GI, she doesn't work on the weekends. And so she's telling the inpatient, she told me yesterday, the inpatient GI team what's going on, why I'm getting the tube, all of my special snowflakeness and all that, so they kind of know what to look for. And then I have to meet with dietitian, I have to meet with nutrition people, and then I also have to meet with like my home health coordinator. So it's like a 3-part coordination between my home, the hospital, and then my insurance company. And then there's home health care facilities that we have to figure out all of my supplies, all of my, you know, my pump, my tubing, flushes and saline and cleaning stuff and the actual formula. And so they're only there Friday and Monday. And so because the surgery is happening on a Friday, we can't really do anything until Monday, which is why now I'm gonna be in there at least 4 days. My mom is gonna stay with me, which is awesome. So she's totally she's gonna be my hospital buddy, which is awesome to have somebody with you. Oh my gosh, for anybody that has to go through any of this stuff on your own, my heart bleeds for you. Like, it is so difficult. So the tube surgery, like J tube surgery, would have been the same, just depending upon what day it happened during the week and my complications and pain problems and blah, 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 blah. Recovery time. It was super interesting talking to interventional radiology, and I was asking him, like, we had actually already finished our appointment, and he was talking about, well, he was doing paperwork and we were talking about consent and issues and blah, 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 potential issues. And we were just like making chit chat. And so I was like, do you do a lot of these? Like a lot of GJ tubes? And he was like, tons of them. We do tons of them. And I'm thinking, for reals? I was like, this just doesn't seem like my special snowflake stuff, like, doesn't seem like it's very prevalent in the world. I mean, good God, how many of us EDS people like have to go years and years and years with no help and no diagnosis and pet you on the head and it's all in your noggin and drink more water and rest and blah, blah. And he said no. He was like, the first thing he said was, they do so many of them on elderly patients that have had strokes and have Alzheimer's, and that their GI tract is negatively affected by those 2 things. And I was like, oh. And so he was like, so for those people, he said, this procedure is like a breeze, because most of them, they can't feel it. They can't feel the stoma, they can't feel the feeds, or they're completely unaware of it. And I was just like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. It's funny what you don't think of until it's like, it's put in front of your face. And so he said for them, like, the recovery time is literally like a week, 2 weeks maybe, and then it's normal and no problems and any of that. And he said, with you and what you're going through and the EDS and the SIBO and the Sjogren's and all the stuff that complicates my GI system, he said it is very rare for us to have that type of patient. And he was like, and you're young and you're active. He said, this is a very, very different procedure for you. And so he said, so unfortunately, your healing time will be somewhere between 1 and 2 months. And he was like, he felt bad, like having to give me like a reality check on it, which, yeah, I didn't really want the reality check on it, but I'd much rather have the information going into it as opposed to the other way around. So 1 to 2 months recovery, assuming that they can actually get the GJ placed all in one sitting. If they can't, then we'll wait a month and then we'll have to go back in and then I have to heal again and whatever. With me not healing well, I'll be given prophylactic antibiotics IV, you know, prior to the surgery and whatnot. And then we are going to hope and pray that everything settles and everything is okay, but obviously we'll take it as it comes. What type of tube would each start with? So you have PEG tubes, which are like where it sits flush with your abdominal wall. There's normally like something that hangs out. Some are short, some are long. And it's just like extensions off of the end of the tube, and it gives you a little bit more room to kind of work with things and get things adjusted. And some people love pegs and they stay with them. I'm incredibly vain. I love my body. I love how I look. I love how I feel, and I can look in the mirror and I can still feel sexy. With my weight being so low, obviously that has affected how I feel about my body, but still overall, I'm very happy with my body. I like the clothes that I can wear, all of that. So I am optioning for a low profile Mickey button once everything heals from the first surgery. So I will start with a peg, and then I will transition to a low profile Mickey that'll be custom made for me a month or two down the road, depending upon how I heal. For J-tubes, for my health system, a low profile Mickey was not even an option based off of how it works and whatnot. Hold on a second, my camera's about to poop out. Okay. So that was a big factor in how I decided to, or what I decided to go with it. I decided to go with the GJ. It has to be changed normally between every 3 months and 6 months, probably closer to 3 for mine, and that's either type of tube. Changed the same way for interventional radiology. Yes, pretty much the same procedure, just take one out and put a new one in. So I'll be out for them, or at least completely whacked out on something. J-tubes the same, they would still have to be changed. With general surgery, it's never gonna be something that I would change myself, which totally sucks because I totally like to do all my own stuff. I can shower about 2 days after surgery. I just have to keep the stoma really dry before and afterwards and whatnot. Granulation tissue is a potential issue with either type of tube. So it's just like really irritated skin that kind of like grows around the stoma because your body's trying to close it. So it has to be burned away or treated. Less ideal, very much hoping that doesn't happen. I'm gonna start feeds. I have something called Malls. It's a ligament, a really tight ligament around my stomach. It affects the circulation of my stomach, and I was worried that that was gonna affect either of the surgeries. Thankfully, that is in the back of my stomach, and I don't have to worry about that. I can start driving again after either of them as soon as I'm off the pain meds, and obviously feel comfortable driving again. I think that's about it, actually. Well, I just totally dropped you guys right off in the middle, my goodness. I had extra questions for GJ tube since that's the one that I'm going with. They'll decide during the surgery where the best placement for the tube is, and I have to give them my preference and then hope for the best. Stomach acid leaking out. Oh, I had asked, I was like, if I am able to get the low profile Mickey, can I lay on my stomach? That was one of my biggest questions. And he said, yes, as long as the pain is tolerable, then yes. He said, but obviously gravity is gonna be pulling acid out at a faster rate than it would anything else. So it's just a factor to kind of keep in your noggin. Hopefully the NG will be placed after I am already out with anesthesia. I hate NG tubes and NJ tubes. They are so rough. Any of you guys that have them, oh my goodness, y'all are rock stars. I asked when I could go back to work, and they were like, you know, as long as you're physically able and you're not lifting a whole heck of a lot, then you can go back pretty quickly. It's just kind of depends on how you're doing, how you're feeling and whatnot, which is super awesome. I will have, I don't know what the follow-up is gonna be yet. Figure it out after the surgery and after we know how everything goes. So, oh my goodness. So GJ tube on Friday. So today's Thursday. So today's the last full day that I will have without a feeding tube. Oh my gosh, it's a huge step. I'm really hoping that this helps and gets me some better nutrition and gets me feeling like I am not, knocking on death's door every day. I've had plenty of that. So love you guys. I will keep you posted. I'll bring you with me as soon as I get to the hospital and all that good stuff. So send the good thoughts. Oh my Lord, send the good thoughts. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe below. And I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.